Welcome to the first in our 2026 Spring Fishing Seminar Series. It's just a great way to kick off the season, have some cookies, coffees, get out of the house, learn how to hopefully catch some more fish, potentially win some nice door prizes, and just have a lot of fun. Tonight, Greg's joining us from the Spokane Walleye Club.
Right.
So obviously we're talking about pike and trout and all the other species, right?
I'll talk about what you want me to talk about.
Good answer.
We can go back to the skiing.
Yeah. Little low. Let's see if I can do this without blowing everyone's eardrums out. How's that?
A little more.
How's that?
Better.
Better?
More.
Doesn't go more.
Your dial doesn't go to 11?
It goes to 10. Okay, so tonight we're going to be talking about the Spokane Walleye Club. How many of you, this is your first seminar? About half. So that means I need to go over the agenda. We're going to speak for about an hour and 15 minutes, then we're going to take a quick bio break. You might have noticed some seminar feedback forms on your seat. Ed or myself will be kind of wandering around with a basket. Please turn those in. There are entries to the door prizes. They also help us to plan what topics to do every year and who to invite back and who to kick to the curb. Greg keeps getting invited back, so he must be doing a good job. So it really, really helps, and we appreciate it. It also lets those of us that might be a little older use the facilities and get rid of that coffee. Then we're going to talk till about 8:15, 8:30 some nights is the goal. And we'll draw for some door prizes and entry to the grand prize. We draw one grand prize entry each week, and then we draw for the prizes on the final seminar. That's kind of the agenda, and with no further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Greg.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. Yeah, I appreciate all of you coming out tonight. I'm Greg. I'm with the Spokane Walleye Club. I've been in the Pacific Northwest, the Spokane area, for about 20 years. And the first couple of times that I went walleye fishing after coming from Kansas to Washington, it was pretty futile. I mean, the way we catch walleyes here is a lot different, especially the structure and how you go about finding fish. So I needed help, so I went to the Spokane Walleye Club, and I started going to their meetings, and I learned from presentations that our club had. We have monthly meetings, and folks who know about fishing, boats, electronics, and things like that come to our meetings and give us seminars. So through that and then networking within the club, my fishing got a lot better. And I would urge you to explore the Spokane Walleye Club if walleye is something that you're interested in. And I am not going to claim to be the best walleye fisherman. I'm not a professional, I don't do tournaments, but I do love to share what I know. And I'll share what I know with you tonight. I've done lots of different topics here as far as walleye fishing is concerned. And I try to do something a little bit different every time I'm here. So if I do get good grades tonight from you, I will try to do something different again next year. So we'll see. But anyway, tonight my presentation is just a summary of going through my 2025 fishing logs. And I'm the webmaster with the Spokane Walleye Club. And it's good to have fishing reports and fishing information on the website. So every time I go fishing, I will type up a report and post it on the website. Members of the Walleye Club get special access to lots of nitty-gritty details about where you were, what colors you were using, what depth you were at, and all that. But then I wasn't getting many reports from other members because they didn't want to give all that away. So our reports that are open to the public, a lot of those details are stripped out. But I'm going to give you all the details tonight from my fishing exploits on Lake Roosevelt, specifically in the vicinity of the Spokane Arm. So I hope that you guys enjoy that. Every year I come, I apologize. I don't know much about Lake Pend Oreille. I've never caught a walleye on Lake Pend Oreille. I would like to, but by the time I would drive 2 hours to get there and pay the licenses and all the out-of-state stuff, there's just so many good opportunities in Washington, I'm always distracted by that. So, I'm going to talk about Lake Roosevelt. And when I talk about Lake Roosevelt, I pay very close attention to water levels and what the water is doing, whether it's going down or whether it's coming up. And there are big seasonal changes on Lake Roosevelt. I believe Lake Pend Oreille goes through some of the same kind of stuff, making room in the reservoir or the basin for the wintertime snowmelt. And there are other factors that go into how much the drawdown happens at Lake Roosevelt. Like, I gave a presentation to our club members a month and a half ago, and I told them I would not expect a very big drawdown this year because we don't have a very abundant snowpack. But they're doing some dam maintenance on the Grand Coulee Dam, evidently. So there is a forced drawdown this year, so I was wrong right out of the gate, right, Vince? Anyway, there are a couple of club members here tonight, so they may be heckling from time to time. But anyway, I'm going to bring up this chart over and over again as I go through each fishing report I logged for the Spokane Arm. So what I have here is, this information is available on the Bureau of Reclamation website, and I'll have all my web links at the very end, so you'll be able to reference those. And you can Google search a lot of this stuff and find it. But I really like this graph because the blue line is for the current water year. Water year starts October 1st and runs through the end of September. And they do it that way because snowpack generally starts to build in the fall, melts off in the spring. So that's kind of the water year as far as the West goes. So the blue line is our current water year, and it cut off a couple of days ago when I built this presentation. We can also see the graph from last year, also a low snowpack year. So the drawdown was less than the average. And I'm not sure if it's a 10-year average, a 30-year average. I don't know what they're using for their average curve. But so far this year, we're pretty close to what the average drawdown is. I don't know if they're going to pull it down all the way into the 1240s. I kind of doubt it, but I've already proven I don't know what I'm talking about. So anyway, we're going to reference this chart frequently. So Lake Roosevelt, in some areas of the river, especially in the summer, will fish like a lake. There's very little current. There's not a lot of movement going on. And fish behave differently in a lake-type environment. They will come up, they'll scurry around in the shallows, especially in the summertime when we have weed growth and a lot of abundant forage that's shallow. But during the drawdown, and especially if you go way up north, say around Northport or above Kettle Falls, Lake Roosevelt behaves like a river. There's a lot of current there. You're focusing on current seams, areas where the fish aren't fighting current and expending energy for no reason. So this will drive the way I fish Lake Roosevelt, and you'll even have current in parts of the Spokane Arm, which I'm going to talk about. So that is one of the reasons that I really like to utilize the chart of where the lake elevation is. I'm also going to talk to you about waypoint management. When I go fishing, and I think a lot of my friends, when I go fishing with them, they kind of start off with a blank slate of ideas for the day. And when they start catching fish, they'll start laying waypoints down. You don't have to keep those waypoints forever, but start laying waypoints down. And on a given day, my fish finder may look like that. And I try to be a good boy and go back and clean those things up. And I do. When the weather's nice and the garage is warm, I'll go out there and go through. And I will remove a lot of the redundancies and then clean it up so that my waypoints end up looking more like this. And I will put a date on them. That's what's important to me. And in many lakes, I'll put the date and the year on them. But for Lake Roosevelt, my naming convention is different. I go with, and then I got a little ahead of myself. But as you start to fish through the seasons, then you can put together some patterns about when the fish are up shallow, when they are back down deeper, or relating to edges, or relating to things like weed beds. So when you have your dates listed, when you go to the lake, you can pull up your fish finder and go through very quickly, okay, this is a good August spot. I'm going to try this here in August. Or vice versa, this is a winter spot. I'm going to go look for November, December, January points. So that's my normal naming convention. But for Lake Roosevelt, I don't care about what year it was. I just want to know what the lake elevation was. So this is how I name my waypoints for Lake Roosevelt. And you can do anything with the names of the waypoints you have. If you're fishing below Grand Coulee, you could look back and say, okay, the flow was 95,000 CFS. Put 95K on there and put that in your fish finder. And when you go to Grand Coulee, you can say, okay, that's the water they're releasing there right now. I'm going to look for my spots that are in between this and this flow. And how do you get this data? What if you have a fish finder full of waypoints that you haven't really organized or cataloged? Well, for Lake Roosevelt, there are resources where you can go back and look at what the lake elevation was for the last 30 years if you wanted to. And this is also a Bureau of Reclamation website. And you go to this website here. From the pull-down menu, you can get Grand Coulee Dam. From there, you can select surface elevation. You can add the year in there and the dates, and you can get a whole listing of what the month of May was in 2018, lake elevations and how that changed. So sometimes if I forget to go through and name my waypoints within a week after my fishing trip, I can go and clean things up by using this website and sitting in my garage and cleaning up all my waypoints and getting them organized. All right, so fishing the Spokane Arm of Lake Roosevelt, you have two boat launches to choose from. First one I'm going to talk about is Fort Spokane, because Alan, the big guy in the red shirt back there, he and I went there on Monday. Beautiful day. Fishing, but it was a beautiful day to be out there with a good friend. So from Coeur d'Alene, that's about an hour and 45 minutes. And on Monday, the lake elevation was 1262 feet. And I know kind of where I want to fish in February and early March on Lake Roosevelt. And that's usually in the Two Rivers area. That'll give you access to the main lake of the Columbia. So I'm not actually technically talking about the Spokane arm on a couple of these, but launching out of Fort Spokane is right here. You go through here, that no wake zone, and then you come out. And there are several features that you may hear locals talk about. The community of Deer Meadows is right here. And we ended up fishing over in this area quite a bit of the day. And it's a housing development that overlooks the Lake Roosevelt. There's a big rock that sticks out here. It's an island. It's a rock. It may not be an island now because the reservoir is down about 20 feet. Then there's Casino Flats. That's a common area to fish this time of year. And then Outhouse Flats is upriver a little ways, probably about 3 miles or so. And we're going to talk about a late winter pattern here. So as I mentioned before already, we're going to talk about this shoreline here and the structure that is present there. So if you go to the Garmin website, you can pull maps off there. It's pretty hard to find where they keep their the boat app on there. But I'm going to be using the Garmin maps from that website for this presentation. And I'll have a link to where I get these at the end. So Alan and I come out of Two Rivers, get out on the main lake. We're motoring around. I'm looking on the fish finder. I've got side scan out, doing all the things you're supposed to do. We're not marking anything. We wanted to fish up shallow. Jigging or throwing blade baits would have been our preference. That's a little more fun for us. But it's like, okay, don't see anything. I'm going to pull up my waypoints. I'm going to find a comp for 1262 feet. So what did I do? I found one that was February 25th for 1267. And we motored right up to that waypoint, put the Tarova down, started our troll, and I had a fish within 10 minutes. Couldn't even mark them. They were pinned to the bottom. Alan picked up 2 more fish within the next 20 minutes. So we thought it was game on. We only ended up with 7 keepers this day, but they were nice fish. A couple of them were close to 20 pounds. Whoa. Not 20 pounds, 20 inches. I am trying to tell you the truth, but sometimes fish stories just leak out. Yeah, and he'll keep me honest too. Okay, here's the rundown of what we were doing. It was a bright, sunshiny day. There was very little wind on the water. There was light current in this particular area. It's a big part of the river. And the waypoints and the fish we were catching started out around 45 feet of depth along the break line. So we're looking at this break right here. Our initial few trolling patterns were at the depth of where my waypoint was, but I had other waypoints that were deeper during about the same time of year. And we used a variety of colors, but I think one of the more consistent colors was a silver sparkle smile blade, the 1.5. And it was arranged in a double hook harness. It didn't have wedding ring and all of the beads on it. It was a little smaller presentation. We also caught a fish or two using a slow death hook, but long story short, we did not slay them this day, but I think we did as well or better than the other people that we encountered on the lake and at the parking lot. Yes?
What's the bottom like in those areas? Is it rocky or soft bottom? Or?
It's mostly sand and gravel. There are a few spots of rubble. I do not recall us losing one spinner. I think we may have snagged once during the whole day, and that might have been up at Outhouse Flats actually. But anyway, it's not a super snaggy area. I think it may get snaggier the deeper and deeper you go, but we didn't have any issues. And we were trolling. Our troll speed was with the current about a mile an hour, and we tried going against the current, but it wasn't as productive. So, yeah.
Greg, what size hooks are you tying on that rig?
I generally use size 4s or size 6s, so they're pretty small. I get a lot of crap from people that I take fishing about how small my hooks are, but I don't think it makes a big difference because trout fishermen will use the tiny little this much and catch a 20-inch trout. And I would prefer not to have the bulk or the weight. The less snags I get, the happier I am. So we'll talk about my setup here, bottom bouncer setup. And we're going to add more layers to the bottom bouncer conversation as I continue with the presentation tonight. But I spool my bait caster reel with 20-pound braided line. And I like Suffix 832, and I've tried some others, but I keep going back to 832. Then there's the bottom bouncer, which is just a piece of wire and lead. And I like to carry a variety of different weights, and we'll talk more about weight of the bottom bouncer here in a little bit. But this apparatus is just to keep your bait in the strike zone, because walleyes, especially this time of year when they're not very active, are very bottom oriented. They are not going to come up a couple feet off the bottom to take your presentation this time of year. They want it right there, and they're not going to expend much energy for it. And the bites we were getting were subtle. They were just, okay, Alan had his rod in the rod holder, and it's like, Alan, you got a bite. Oh, okay. But yeah, they were very subtle. And I run 12 to 15 pound monofilament or fluorocarbon. I go back and forth between the two. And my snell length, I usually tie my snells off about this far apart, or this far. And if I'm in a snaggy area or a high current area, or I'm just having problems losing a bunch of rigs, you can just shorten them, tie it off, and that may help alleviate some of that issue. Are there any questions so far about this rig? We're going to go more into it later, okay? All right, so that was trip number 1. We were using 3-ounce bottom bouncers to get down to 50 to 70 feet. And I generally don't like fishing deeper than that. The fish that you catch from that depth are usually dead on arrival. Good thing most of the fish that we caught were keeper size Monday. All right, we're going to move on to the next fishing trip. And this one, we launched out of Porcupine Bay. I think this was actually a solo trip for me, actually. And that's a little less, but under hour 40 minutes. And Porcupine Bay is a really, really nice launch. I like launching there better than Fort Spokane. So we're going to go back almost an entire year. This was in April of 2025, April 18th. And we are at a higher pool than I fished 2 days ago. And this was at 1270. So Porcupine Bay campground right here. We're going to talk about this area right in here. Blue Creek is another spot that I think I'm going to talk about toward the end here. But yeah, this is on the order of 1.5 miles, maybe 2 miles from the launch here. And this was my first fishing trip of the year last year. I had a busy spring, and kids were in track and all kinds of stuff. But it was a nice day. I made a quick trip. It was afternoon. It was just a couple of hours, but I got a limit. I got a limit in less than 3 hours. Limit of 16, and they were nice fish too. So we're going to talk about this little stretch right here. So there's a creek that comes into this area, and it cuts either from here, yeah, I think it's here, and it cuts into this spot here. And the main river channel is out here, and it's 150 feet deep or more. So the fish were up on this shallow little point, and weeds hadn't started emerging there yet, but it does, in the summertime, there is a nice patch of weed growth in this area. So the summer, this could be a good spot too. But they were just waiting in here, and we're dealing with fish that are in the pre-spawn period. They're getting really close to spawn. So these were all mature walleyes here. Mostly males, but there may have been a female or two within the bunch. And most of them were in the 15 to 20 inch range, so you get a limit of those, you've got something there. And I believe the reason they're staging here, because if you back up and look at the aerial view here, this is a very narrow stretch of the river right here. It's actually called the Narrows. I need to back up so you can see better. Okay. And with the spring runoff, there's a good deal of current coming through here. There are other spots that the fish can kind of relax on their way up the arm to spawn above marker 5 in that area. But on this particular day, these fish were staged here. And the year prior to that, in April, club member and I, Doug, we went out and we had a really good day in this same spot. So I had April 1264 waypoints there, which is pretty close to 1270, so I'm going to go give it a try. And as I motored the boat right up into this area, I started to mark a few fish coming up onto this ridge. This is usually where I start, and then I'll pull this way, and then pull back. And sometimes you'll catch some fish all the way up into here. But on this particular day, they were mostly concentrated right there. This was another bright sunshine day, very few clouds. There was light current in this particular place. And I was catching fish initially in about 25 feet of water. And I think I had probably made enough noise that they did back off into 35 feet of water by the time I was done. I was using a similar setup with a smile blade and pulling through there. But after I found a school and knew exactly where they were, I did start to cast some blade baits, and I think I picked up a half dozen on the blade bait. And we'll talk a little bit more how to rig a blade bait and how it operates here later. But blade baits are a really productive walleye catcher if you find fish schooled up in concentrations, and they work really well in current too. So that was the story for this particular day. We'll talk more about bottom bouncers in this setup here. Bottom bouncer weight, you kind of have to feel it out. You want to have about a 45-degree angle between your rod tip and the water surface to have the desired effect. If you have if that angle starts to be more than this, and you're pulling from way, way back there, the bottom bouncer starts to lose its utility because the angle of it is going to start laying down more and more. So then you're not only having the presentation up from the strike zone, it's probably dragging on the bottom by this time, but you're also taking away the efficiency of the bottom bouncer because then this lead part here is more exposed to snags if it's laying down on the bottom. So if you are getting lots of snags with your bottom bouncer, I would recommend sizing up so it's heavier so you can keep the angle right. Does that make sense? Okay, I see a lot of people nodding their heads because if it's heavier, it's going to sink faster and you can keep your angle correct. But as a general rule of thumb, if I'm fishing in 15 to 25 feet of water, I'll have 1.5 ounces or maybe 2 ounces on. Kind of depends on if you have some current or the wind is blowing you around or whatever. And then you can go up to as much as 3 ounces if you're fishing 40, 50 feet of water. Bottom bouncers come in a couple different varieties. This is the one that's most common and the one you can find most easily in stores. It's called the torpedo style, where you tie your line here and it is fixed to your line. And then you clamp the spinner rig or whatever you're pulling off of the swivel to help keep it from getting all tangled up. That's what I was thinking. And this is a very effective way of using bottom bouncers. This is my preference, though. I like the pencil style, which is nothing but wire with a loop on it and the weight. And then you attach, well, this one is a display on how you tie the torpedo style. And the pencil bottom bouncer, you put on a clevis or one of those apparatus that will slide up and down the line. So the way I use a bottom bouncer, it's nothing but a slip sinker with a piece of wire on it, which I think provides some benefits. The slip sinker kind of style allows a fish to take the presentation. You can give slack to your rod tip. A lot of times I'll bow the rod tip when I feel a bite, and that allows the fish to munch at it, pull it without feeling the resistance and spitting it right away. Also, one of the benefits of using this setup is that if you snag your bottom bouncer and you're using a quick change clevis, usually it just breaks right there, and you get to keep all of this stuff here and just lose the bottom bouncer. Where with the torpedo style, if you have to break the line on that, sometimes you will lose all of it. And this also allows you to change weights a lot faster. You don't have to tie any knots. You just put it in the clevis, take it off, you're done. But the pencil one, I'll concede that when you let your line down, it will occasionally spin around as it's going down if you're not careful. And it is a little more prone to getting tangled.
So are you recommending there that you let down really slow?
I think it's more important with the pencil style. If you're using a slip style sinker, especially if you're sitting stationary and you decide, okay, I'm going to free spool this down, that thing's going down and it's doing all kinds of stuff. So you always want to get up to trolling speed. You want to lay your presentation out, make sure it's all straight, and then I will usually slow it down occasionally. Just a little thumb brake every now and then to get it down. Because most of the time, when tangles happen, it's happening when it's going down. All right. Okay, so last year, 10 days later, I'm excited. I got a couple of my friends from church. We're going to back to Roosevelt. We're going to slay them in that exact same spot. Well, the water dipped 5 feet, and we're also at the time of year, late April into early May, when the mature walleyes are thinking about something other than eating. So I believe this particular instance, we caught them pretty much in the spawn. And I'm not going to drive the boat all the way up through really skinny water to get to all these fish. But anyway, needless to say, this was one of my more disappointing trips of the year. I think we caught 24 walleyes, but most of them were 10 or 11 inches. So those were the juveniles that were not up spawning. So, the spot that I was having success with 10 days prior had no fish on it. We caught nothing there. So I started heading up. It's like, okay, we're going to go upstream. They're probably migrating up there to do their spawn. Let's go see if we can find them. At 12:65, and I was not driving the boat. Ed was driving his boat, so I did not want him going up beyond this area here with 1265 feet. Yeah, it gets pretty skinny up there. So we ended up boating down into this particular area below buoy 3. And I believe this is about 8 miles. I think I have it marked out. But here's marker 5. It's on a peninsula that during full pool is covered up with water, but not by very much. But at 1265, this is a big peninsula here with just a little trickle of water coming through here.
It's 50 feet exposed.
Yeah,
When it's that low, it's literally an arm you can walk up and play.
Yeah.
It's that high.
yeah.
But I'll tell you the best fishing is right there.
Yeah, there's a really deep hole.
Buoy 5 is probably the best fishing on that whole arm.
Yeah, it can be really good.
Crazy.
Yeah, if you're confident enough to.
20 feet out of the water.
Yeah, was it pretty high?
Yeah, Sunday that buoy's 20 feet out of the water.
Yeah, you're looking up at it. But there is a nice hole that in the summertime is over 50 feet deep.
Oh, yeah.
Right there. So I did map it out using Google Earth from Porcupine Bay to the area that we fished was 8.5 miles. So one of the strategies that I employ in April when I think that the fish are up, getting ready to spawn or are spawning, I will go up as far as I can and feel comfortable going. I will start fishing there, and I will follow the channel down until I start finding fish. And I have stacked up a lot of waypoints right in here over the last few years, starting up here, fishing the channel edge, and just going until I start catching. So there are a bunch of April waypoints, and I picked one with 1267, and I started fishing there. And looking at this closer, I feel that this is a good area because this is the first spot that has depths of 30 to 40 feet when the lake is drawn down low. So we're looking at, this is the channel here, and you start to see these pools, and then there's another deep pool here that runs all the way up to close to buoy 3. So when the fish are not in the act of spawning, they're just sitting in these holes here, letting the current go over their head, waiting for my bottom bouncer and smile blade to come across their face. So on this particular day with Ed and Mike, we caught a bunch of fish. They weren't very big, but I have done very well for size in this particular area in the past. The year prior to that, I hit that spot like 3 times in 10 days and pretty much had my freezer full for the season. But our chartreuse smile blade worked pretty well. We had, this was not correct. There was moderate current through there. And looking back at my fishing report, the holes were 45 to 50 meters. So as far as bottom bouncer trolling, you can troll a bottom bouncer with a spinning rod if you want. I've even trolled bottom bouncers with a Snoopy rod and a Barbie pole before. It doesn't work great, but you can do it. But this is my preferred setup here. I don't have any particular brand loyalty to a casting rod. I have quite a few Quantums, but what I look for is at least 150 yards worth of capacity. If you've ever broken off bottom bouncing and you happen to break a weak spot somewhere halfway into the spool, then you're pretty much done fishing with that particular reel for the day. So you want to have a lot of line capacity on there. And same goes for fishing rods. I've fished with people who bottom bounce with kokanee rods. We're talking about 10-foot noodle rods with a bottom bouncer. And when they set the hook, they have to pretty much jump to do it to get any kind of hook penetration, but they'll work. My preference, though, is I like something in the 6 to 7 foot range. I'd like medium weight, and I like a moderate to fast tip. And the stiffness of the rod translates to how sensitive it is. And there's a sweet spot between being sensitive and feeling the bite to where that rod is maybe too stiff and the fish feels and will spit it. So one of the rods I have now is a fast tip. It's a Fish Eagle from Bass Pro Shops, and it used to be $70, but all of a sudden it jumped up to $90. And but I like that one. And then I also have one that's super smooth. It's the St. Croix rod. That's twice the cost here, but it's very nice. And that one is specifically made for walleye trolling. Okay. Let's see what we have on our timer here. We'll go about 10 more minutes. All right, let's move into summertime. A lot of track meets last year with the kids. They're in high school now. So I kind of went from early spring and jumped all the way into summer here. And we spent a bunch of time up at Northport too, which is not anywhere close to the Arm, but worth checking out in the month of late May and into June. So this was not exactly a hardcore fishing day. My daughter was in 8th grade at the time, and we took her 2 friends out tubing and water skiing. But I casually mentioned, we could do a little fishing if you want. And I didn't think that was going to happen. But all three girls were like, okay, we're going to go grill our hamburgers, and after that, we're going to go fishing. I'm like, hey, I like the sound of that. So, setting the stage here, 1,284 feet, midsummer, full pool. And I love full pool on the Arm, because you get to fish shallow, you get to fish weed beds, you get to fish rocks, you get to bass fish, basically, for walleyes. You can catch walleyes in 5 feet of water in the summer up in the Arm, especially if you get under that chalky water where all the wake boats stir up the water. But we're not going to talk about that particular spot. So we put the tube and the skis away. We had our grill out at the campground. And then we decided, okay, we're going to go fishing. Well, it's already 7 o'clock in the evening, so we're not going to go very far. So I said, okay, I'll look at my waypoints. And I remember I have some July waypoints here. It's really hit and miss. If the fish are there, it's awesome. But sometimes they're not. So we went over there. And I consulted my waypoints. I had some July 5th waypoints at 1286, which has been essentially full pool. And this is right as you come out of the Narrows, and there's a research buoy right here, and there's a weed bed, and typically a bunch of drunk people with their big weight boats right here. So it was at sunset. We were fishing weed beds, and we were up shallow. I remember going through there and looking at the sonar, and you see the arches coming up off the bottom. And they're up off the bottom, too. It's like, oh, these fish are active. They're not like belly to the bottom. So we're going to fish jigs here, and I have 3/8 ounce BMC Moon Eye jig paired with a 3-inch curly-tailed grub. And we started casting. With the girls, it was more like dragging jigs through there. And this is my preferred jig setup for walleyes. I will spend more money on a jigging rod than I will a bottom bouncing rod, because the bite is so subtle with a jig, and it's so fun to feel that quick little thump. And then if there's weight there, it's hook set. It's just really fun. It's very subtle. My reel of choice is a size 20 or 2500, which has good line capacity, but it's not too heavy and bulky. And I pair that with a 7.2 rod. I have a Fenwick HMG. It retails for $170 now. I got mine used for $25. So, yeah, that's a good thing about being a Spokane Walleye Club member, too, is as the guys get old and can't fish anymore, they start selling their stuff. So, this one is 7.2, medium weight, and it has a fast tip. So that fast tip means it's stiff, and you can really feel the bite. And when you feel that thump, usually I just give them the hammer because they've got it. But sometimes you'll feel just kind of like a nip, nip, nip. That's when you gotta kind of let them try it again. Boom. When I'm fishing with my jig rod, I like 8-pound Suffix 832 to a fluorocarbon leader, and I'll usually run that leader about this long. And then the Alberto knot, I learned how to tie that last year, which I like. It's better than the double uni knot that I was tying before.
Why do you say that?
Why do I say that? I think it's a little easier to tie,
Okay.
and I haven't broken it off as
So
much.
as far as the splice going through the top furrow, is there any significant difference?
I don't think, he asked if there's a significant difference in the knot going through your rod guides. I don't think so. And I haven't quite graduated to an FG knot. I've watched videos and like, screw that. It's like,
how cold it is.
yeah, like I'm not going to tie that this time of year. I don't know, but there are a lot of good knots out there.
You
But
used to use a loop knot on your jig.
I do not use a loop knot on my jig, but that does intrigue me. I would give that a little extra on there. Yeah. And as far as the walleye presentation, I find myself doing the same thing so much of the time. It's lift, lift, pause, lift, lift, pause. And the lifts kind of depends on the mood of the walleyes. Sometimes you can move that jig a good 6 inches or so off the bottom. But most of the time I'm lifting it in my mind about this far off the bottom, tap, tap, and yeah, it's just, I'm moving my rod to about this much of the time. And almost all of the time, you will get that bite when it's coming down or it's paused. You'll just feel that thump, and then feel for a little resistance, and boom, it's there. So, and the sensation is pretty similar to fishing like a jig or something for bass, except when you get a bass to bite, you watch the line, you feel the thump, and then you watch the line move. That's when I set the hook on a bass. You don't get the line movement with a walleye. They just eat it, and they go, oh, that's nice. You just sit there. But my jig presentation, I think it's most effective if you're casting, if it's 15 feet to maybe 35 feet. Once it's 35 feet or deeper, it can be difficult to feel continuous bottom contact unless you're using a really heavy jig. Back in August. All right, so my neighbor that lives 2 doors down from me, he doesn't fish at all. He only fishes when I take him out. And he is a middle school history teacher. God bless him. So this was the last day before he had to report to school to get ready for the school year. And this was one of the most memorable trips of the year for me because I treated him to the whole deal. I brought my grill with me. We did a catch and cook. We grilled honey, ginger, and miso. We grilled walleye in the sauce, and we had the rice packet, and we were just drinking beer after a good day on the water. And this fellow that met us at the boat launch said, I heard you caught some walleyes. And I said, yeah, you want to try some? And he goes, well, I got to go, but I would really love to trade you some of this Copper River salmon that I have. I'm like, well, okay. My freezer is full. But anyway, my wife was like, thank you. Go walleye fishing, you bring me a salmon. Anyway, it was a great day on the water. We're looking at 1281 feet. So you can see on the typical drawdown or typical curve on Lake Roosevelt, you hit this peak where it's at full pool for only about a month or a month and a half in the summer. And there is almost always a 5 to 10 foot drawdown in August, and it oftentimes occurs in the second week of August, and it's drawn down a little bit through September, and then it comes back up close to summer pool in October through the rest of fall and winter. But I have mixed feelings about this drawdown in the summer because it messes up my weed bed bite, because the weeds that are productive all through July and into the early part of August are not as productive anymore, because that 5 to 10 foot drawdown is enough to kind of push the walleyes back out. So I'm going to tell you here where I start to look for walleyes again after that drawdown. So we're going to go back to where we started with the winter kind of pattern. And we're going to talk about outhouse flats and the neighborly area. So there are pretty good sized weed beds on both of these flats. There is a neighborly cove up here, and this is full of weeds right up in here, really humpy, and it comes into the channel there. It's a really fun and productive place to fish. There's a lot of cool structure there. And then Outhouse Flats is about a 2 or 3 mile long flat that runs through here. And this has a lot of nice weed beds here. There was one event, or one fishing report that I didn't include in this because it was very similar to the fishing report with my daughters. But I caught a bunch of fish up in here. They were small, but just right on the weed edge, 20, 25 feet in the middle of July. A lot of fun. But on this particular day, since it's after that bump or drawdown, that secondary drawdown late in the summer, we're going to be talking about deeper water here. So again, launched out of Fort Spokane.
Greg, I have a question.
Yes.
Water temperature mean much?
His question is, does the water temperature mean much? Yes and no. It's funny how you can go to Singer Bay out of Kettle Falls and fish in January where the eyes on your rod are freezing up. The water temperature, at least the surface water temperature, is 40 degrees or less, and you can catch walleyes aggressively jigging a blade bait. They will track that down and they'll whack them. So, but the bite windows in the winter can be pretty narrow. You can see fish on your sonar. If you have live scope, you can see them there, and you can throw everything you've got at them, and it'll be nothing during the winter. But there are certain bite windows where they can be very aggressive in the winter. In the summertime, I've seen walleyes active with the water temperatures all the way up into the 70s. And back in the Midwest, you'd see 80-degree water temperatures. And walleyes are active. So I think the walleye is probably less influenced by water temperature than, say, a largemouth bass, which I don't recall too many people fishing for bass in the wintertime when I was back in the Midwest. I mean, the bite for bass doesn't really start to pick up very much until you get into April or May here, where a walleye, you can catch a walleye any month of the year here. And yeah, you can watch ice fishing videos of people catching walleye and they're flying in just to hammer a jig. So I don't know. Those are my chaotic thoughts about it.
And then lastly, what about the moon?
The moon. I love to debate this with my friends. Some of my friends will plan trips around the moon cycles. I go fishing when I can go fishing. But yeah, some of the studies that tied fish activity to moon phases talked about oceans and the tidal influences that the moon has on. But you're not going to get tidal influences on, even like Ponderay, it's big, but it's not that big. So,
Well, I'm leaning more towards like a full moon, bright night, all night versus.
a full moon, bright night. We fished plenty of those. We go down to the Snake River where we pull crankbaits in the fall, full moons. We almost always catch our fish right at sunset and within an hour after sunset. And we don't catch them very long after that. So I am very skeptical about the moon cycles, because you would think, okay, as the full moon is approaching, as it's approaching the full moon, you get the full moon to come up and it's overhead when the sun is going down. Where after the full moon, you usually have to wait a while for the full moon to come up over the horizon. And I have not noticed a difference in when we get our bites when we plan around the moon phase down on Snake River. But he will give you a different story because he's caught a bunch of big fish during the full moon phase. But he doesn't go fishing any other time. All right, I digress. So we're going to back up. We're going to look at outhouse flats. We're going to look at this particular area right here. So I have a waypoint, September 12th, 1280 feet. So my teacher friend and I, we pull up to this area and we troll through and we look at these waypoints. We fish in the morning for a little while. We catch a couple of dinks. Flat calm, nothing going on. So we moved up to Neighborly, and we fished my 1281 foot waypoints, which is a pretty close match for time and lake elevation. And when we first get there, it is dead nothing too. But about lunchtime, the south wind starts to pick up like it typically does on Lake Roosevelt. It starts to blow and we get a ripple on the water. And by the time we get down to the bottom where this little creek comes in, we start catching fish in here. And we caught 4 or 5 real quick. Problem with this story is, I had an important phone call to make at 1 o'clock as a job interview. And there was no cell phone coverage up at Neighborly Cove, and I really wanted to stay there. But I had to go. We had to motor back the 7 miles or so back to Outhouse Flats, where I knew we had cell phone coverage because I tested my phone a couple of times in the morning before leaving. And so we went back. Yeah, this is about a 10-mile jaunt from the boat launch up to Neighborly. So we went back to Outhouse Flats, and I said, okay, Dan, I need to take this call. This guy, I know him, he's cool. We talk about fishing, but I'm going to have this job interview. You're going to watch both rods. So I set the Terova on autopilot right along the break. And there's a nice chop on the water. Dan could not keep his rods in the water. It was one after the other. He stacked up 16 keepers in the 45 minutes I was on that phone call. And that's what comprised our, well, part of it comprised our big grill out. So anyway, those bite windows.
Did you get the job?
Yes,
Oh,
I'm working there right now.
It was worth it.
But yeah, it was funny because I was like, hey, Ken, I'm laughing at my friend here. He has 2 walleyes in the net and they're all tangled up with each other. So it was a pretty informal interview. Anyway, that was really fun. So what we were doing here, and you can see the resemblance of some of the structure. We're looking at channel edges with weed beds here in both of them. So there are weed beds up in here, weed beds here. So they're still relating to that bait source, those weed beds, but they're probably along the channel edge during the day and going up into the vicinity of the weeds at night. Okay, what else was I going to talk about? This fella here gave me a good idea to talk to you about. What does the bottom bouncer bite feel like? Who's fished bottom bouncers for walleyes? Okay. Is the bite super violent? No.
I think it was different in the summer than it was in the late fall. In the late fall, it was kind of like just like this. Then you kind of wait for the second one to set it, and in the summer, it was a little more vigorous.
Yeah. It's going to vary from day to day. And it's a lot different if you are trolling for walleyes in a river with a lot of current too, because those fish don't have a lot of time to make up their mind. They just got to go. So, but for Lake Roosevelt, fishing in the summertime, you're fishing steep edges or you're fishing this time of year, you're right. It's very subtle. And a lot of times, if you have your rod in your hand, you'll just feel a little bit of weight. Sometimes there'll be a tick. But what that walleye is doing is it's following your presentation. And if you want to be entertained by how finicky a toothy, mean-looking critter can be, Google bottom bouncer camera walleye. And there's a fishing pro, Jeff Matiti, and he's in the upper Midwest, and he put a camera above his bottom bouncer and then had it focused on the spinner, and he's pulling it through. And it's very interesting how long this fish can be engaged and follow your lure. It can be minutes before they decide whether or not they're going to bite it. And the walleye behaves a lot differently than the bass that attack his lure. The northern pike, very much different, where a walleye will follow it for a long time, and when they decide to finally engage on that, if it's a good-sized fish, they'll just open their mouth, they'll accelerate, and they'll grab onto the bait, and sometimes match the speed that you're going as they're gliding, chewing on this. And a lot of times, we don't feel that walleye until it's turned its head. And they all did it on the video. They've got it in their mouth, they're feeling pretty good about themselves, and they decide, okay, turn their head, rod tip goes, and that's when you set the hook. So sometimes that tick is that initial engagement, and you don't feel that walleye until it turns its head. Other times it's even more subtle than that, where they'll just kind of chew on it a little bit, feel the little, your rod tip will just, and you don't want to set the hook on that. And when this is happening, I just bow my rod tip down to the water and wait until I feel mass or weight on the end of the rod tip. And then you can go ahead and set the hook. And you can watch videos of these guys in the Midwest that Lindy rig, and it's a slip sinker style too, where they'll fish with spinning gear, and when they get a bite, they'll just open up the bail on their reel and let it go. And then they'll count to 5 or 10 seconds. They'll engage the bail again, reel down, and if there's weight there, they'll set the hook. So I don't go to that extreme, but yeah, you want to be patient. But then you don't want to be too patient because then they can leave. So that's a conundrum. All right. We're going to talk about October 5th. This might be my last one. We're looking at a full pool again because the water bumped back up. Unfortunately, I have not experienced that once the water bumps back up, the fish don't seem to return back to the weed beds for my enjoyment. They kind of stay back on the edge, which is a bummer. So we're going to talk about Porcupine Bay again. And this is one where you don't even have to put the big motor on if you don't want to. Because Blue Creek is just across and a little bit upstream. So when you go to Blue Creek, you don't even have to put the boat on plane if you don't want to. But this area is really productive at times. You can fish there all day and continue to catch fish. But fish are not there year round. It seems to be more of a wintering, late fall kind of area where they kind of stick there. I've had good days here in March too. But you can catch fish all the way from where Blue Creek enters the Spokane arm, and then you can work this break all the way out here. By the time you get to this, if it's near full pool, you're almost in 80 feet of water on that edge. But up in here, in October, you can be fishing in 35 to 50 feet of water. That's generally where I'll start, looking for water or fish in the shallower, and then I'll work deeper if necessary. And this is a hard spot to mark fish because they can be so tight to that break that your transducer beam will not be able to parse out the fish between the gradient of the drop. So have to be careful with that. Just because you're not marking fish doesn't mean that there might not be some there. We're going to talk about a cloudy day in October where I was using blade baits along this edge. And a lot of times I'll use a bottom bouncer and troll through an area just to see if there's anything around. And walleyes will often take a night crawler if it's available. And if you can find concentrations of fish, then maybe the trolling technique is not the most efficient technique. Because you have to troll through it, turn around, troll back, troll, rather than just sitting anchor lock and fishing down. In this particular instance, the fish were pretty deep, so vertical jigging worked better than casting. And these are some of the colors that I like of blade baits. My friend Travis in the Walleye Club, he custom paints blade baits. So I get a lot of my product from him. But these are Norasada style blade baits. And I like the bright colors when you're fishing deep. Especially if you have bright colors with black stripes, because that black shows up well in deep water or stained water, the contrast. And green, the wavelength of the color green is more vivid in deep water compared to your reds or other colors. Just the wavelength is able to exude color better in deep water. So in this particular instance, we were in 50 to 70 feet of water along the channel edge. Here's my blade bait fishing setup. I use the same reel, but I size up. I use 20-pound braid rather than 8 on my jigging rods. Mostly because it's a more it's a more active style. It's quicker. Fish have to make up their mind if they're going to take a blade bait because it's moving. So I don't think they're particularly line shy with a reaction style bait. And I use a heavier, stiffer monofilament leader too. I use mono with blade baits because the hooks on a blade bait can turn around and flip, and sometimes it'll nick the leader. And I've had better luck with abrasion resistance with monofilament versus the fluorocarbons that I've tried. And I like Berkeley,
Trilene.
yes, Trilene XT, the extra tough for blade baits, Trilene XT. That XT line is very stiff, which is important with blade baits because when you cast them or when you're working them, limp line is more subject to fouling. So that stiffness of the leader, I think, keeps my blade bait from turning on itself because these hooks will just flail around with an active blade bait action. And I'll show you what the blade bait action is here in a little bit. But that line has cut down on my numbers of foul baits significantly. And as far as the rod goes, I really like the Cabela's Fish Eagle rod that I've had for years. When I updated the slide, this number used to be $70, and I've had that rod for probably close to 10 years now. So it's been worth it to me. And I like something with medium weight and a fast tip, not an ultra fast tip. You don't want anything too stiff, but you will feel a lot of vibration when you use a blade bait. So this is what a blade bait is. It's just a piece of metal with a molded lead head. And there are 3 holes here. And you can cast them, let them sink to the bottom, and then pick it up. You'll feel it vibrate, and then you lay it down. Up, down, up, down. If you're fishing in the middle of summer or in October when the water is still relatively warm, you can work these vigorously. You can lift them up the bottom, off the bottom 1.5 feet, 2 feet, and let it flutter back down to the bottom, and you're good. And the bite is almost always on the fall. You may feel a thump similar to the thump you get with a jig, but a lot of times you don't feel anything. You just go for the next rip of the bait, and you just set the hook on a fish because that bait is on the bottom. That walleye said, ooh, that fish just died. I'm going to jump on it. And they either hit it with their mouth or they take a swipe at it to stun it, and you foul hook the fish, and he's yours. So that's how blade bait works. When I'm vertically jigging like I did in October, I will hook my snap into the middle hole on this Norasada style blade bait. Because when you're vertically jigging, it'll give it a nice big wobble and you get a really good flutter back down in the middle hole. When I'm casting a blade bait, I prefer to use the front hole because it just seems to behave a little better. It doesn't dig as hard when you pull it. It's a little more subtle flutter and it's a little tighter wobble. And when we fish in the wintertime and cast, I'm always using the front hole. And I don't use the back hole. I'm not sure why they put that one there. Some people might. As far as weights of blade baits, I have 5/8 ounce blade baits and 3/4 ounce. Those are the 2 primary weights that I carry. And if I'm fishing less than 25 feet, I'm usually using the lighter one, unless there's a lot of current. And then the heavier one was what I was using this particular day. And yeah, so I think that is all I have. I have resources here, but you can let Google be your friend. Google the stuff. And yeah, these URLs are super long. Anyway, thanks again for coming out tonight. Are there any questions that you may have? Yes?
If you're talking about the trolling, what's a good speed for the trolling, or average speed?
Okay. What is my trolling motor speed? This time of year when the water is cold, and up until about when it hits 50, 55 degrees, I'm usually trolling between 0.5 and 0.7 miles per hour, and that's current relative. So if I'm going with a 0.5 mile per hour current, I will add that 0.5 to 0.7 on to get somewhere around a mile an hour. And generally, I recommend trolling with the current, but sometimes in the summer, it doesn't matter when the current is really relaxed. When the water gets above 55 and after the spawn, I start trolling faster to cover more water. After the spawn, the fish spread out all over the place. You can still encounter schools of them, but they're not schooled as tightly. So I'm trolling faster. I'll troll up to a mile and a half an hour. And then later in the summer, toward the fall, I'll use Colorado blades, metal ones, instead of the smile blades. And you can troll those close to 2 miles an hour and cover a lot of water. When the water's warm, walleyes will, if they want to eat, they'll track fast. We catch walleyes trolling big bandit crankbaits at 2.5 miles an hour, and they're a toothy predator. They can accelerate. Yes.
You were saying about post spawn around the middle of April, but how about the 1st of April? Like, first part that start getting pretty good up in there too. You think? Or
yeah, I think in Lake.
Yeah,
I think for Lake Roosevelt, the spawn there usually occurs late April into mid-May for the most part. And it may vary. I think like the Columbia Basin lakes that are shallower, they may go off earlier than that. Lake Pend Oreille might go later than that. It might be closer to Labor Day by the time. Yeah, it's Labor Day, right? No, Memorial Day. Memorial Day. I get those mixed up. It might be closer to Memorial Day for Lake Pend Oreille.
How about Kettle Falls area?
Kettle Falls area, we do well at Kettle Falls starting probably late May, early June. But it can be very difficult because the water levels can change so much. It can come up a foot a day in that time frame if there's a significant drawdown. So you can find fish in spots one day and then they won't be there the next. They're still doing a lot of migration in the month of May and don't really settle into a summer pattern until you get into mid-June. We fish Northport in the very end of May toward early June to catch a lot of the fish that spawned somewhere else on the reservoir and then came back up, and that can be a real fun fishery. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think I beat them up enough for you.
Must have whacked them over the head a bit, and fantastic presentation. Thank you, Greg. So just kind of going over the schedule real quick. Next week we've got Chad Landrum with Go Fish Charters. That's going to be a Pend Oreille seminar. March 19th we've got Jordan from Fins and Feathers. Wins about half the tournaments on Coeur d'Alene, so he probably knows a thing or two. He's been fishing since he was in diapers. March 26th, you've got geeks talking about fish finders and new tech and cool stuff and where the power button is and why you don't see fish near a drop. April 2nd, we've got Bonita again with Roosevelt Rainbow. If you ever want to find Bonita on the lake, just look for the brightest boat in creation. It's bright pink, you can't miss her. And now for the fun part, any kids in the audience? Nope, I guess we'll have to have Greg do the drawing then. You're our honorary kid. So first up, we're going to draw for the door prizes. Up, one last entry. We'll have to mix them up.
Anybody else? That was the low.
Okay. Let's get these guys properly folded so they don't have an unfair advantage. Okay, dig in there deep. We're going to pull for the door prizes first. Here we go. You have to be able to
Jonathan Stein.
Nice, Jonathan.
Okay, right hand or left hand? I wonder what's in the right hand bag. Okay, second door prize.
I know this guy. Does that make it unfair?
Only if you marked it.
Glenn Herman.
Okay, the third one is going to be entered into our grand prize drawing. We've got a couple of great prizes for the end of the seminar series. We're going to draw one name each week, and then on the final one, we're going to draw from that group of 5 names for who gets the fish finder, who gets the handheld GPS, who gets the striker, who gets the hat, who gets the keychain. So one last drawing.
Neil A. Smith.
Neil Smith. Is he here? Perfect. So you'll be entered into a drawing, and we'll draw on April the 2nd. So with Bonita Seminar. Thank you guys. That concludes our seminar tonight. Feel free to ask questions of Greg, and thank you.
That's what I said.